everybody, here we are at our victory garden for week 12 in the series. As you can see, everything is really taking off and looking really nice and lush. We did get some more rain since last week, so
yeah, we pulled the rain gauge. It's been a rainy, I guess the last couple weeks anyway, 3 weeks maybe. So according to our rain gauge, we got almost another 2 inches of rain. So yeah, we've had some big rainfalls lately.
Yep, and so we will go in and take a look. Some of the plants love this hot, humid weather, and then some prefer a little bit different conditions, so we're going to take a look at how they're responding. Alright, so just taking a look at our tomato plants. I've done a few of them where I pruned them and put them on a trellis, so these two plants up here should be a little more compact and a little more controlled, but they've had so much growth in the last week, I'll probably need to kind of re-tie them up. You can also see that we've got these big, beautiful green tomatoes, which everybody is just waiting for, the first tomatoes to get ripe. So hopefully with this weather lately, they'll start to redden soon. And then with some of our other tomato plants that I didn't prune or trellis, they're kind of getting a little bit more bushy or vine-like. So we'll talk more about what to do if your plants are really kind of taking over, how to get them in control a little bit better, and some other trellising systems that you can do in your own garden. Over here we've got our kale, which we will definitely need to be doing a little bit of harvesting because these plants are big, and kale is awesome. It makes really great chips or really nice to add into other cooked dishes. So if you're not a huge fan of kale, it is really healthy and great to just kind of sneak into food. This kale plant here is the only one that isn't looking super nice out of them. So it's got these yellowing leaves around the base, and it's just looking not as robust. So I personally would maybe take off all of these yellow leaves and just everything that looks unhealthy. And then I would see if, that took care of it, and if the plant is gonna grow back and get nice and have these really brilliant green leaves. Otherwise, if it kept looking like this, then that might indicate that it's got a disease or some sort of just issue with this individual plant. And then if it continued to look like this, it might be a good idea to just pull it and make sure that it's not going to infect any of the other plants around it. Okay, so then we're gonna look at another one of these brassica crops, our cabbages. I don't think that the kale, the cabbage, the broccoli was really a huge fan of all of this warm, humid weather. And then this cabbage over here is also, there's so much moisture that it's looking like it's starting to rot a little bit, which, if it's only a little bit, that shouldn't be too much of an issue. When you harvest it, you can just peel off any of the bad looking leaves. But if it really starts to look like that's spreading and it's getting more rotting leaves, then you'll want to harvest it even before it's completely mature, because otherwise you might lose the whole thing. So if it's just starting to look pretty bad, then I would just, take that cabbage so you can get at least what you can from it. But the other ones look okay, so that's good. And then over here we've got the parsley, which is looking nice, and our squashes are really appreciating the weather. So they are trying to take over this parsley bed. And this is personal preference. If you've got a situation like this, you can always cut off this extra limb here. You can also just pick it up and move it. So even if it's starting to root in the soil, it should be pretty easy to just pick it up, and then we're probably going to take this and move it more, let it grow over where we don't have a ton of other stuff going on, and just trying to let the parsley get a little bit bigger. Otherwise, if you're finding plants are vining around pretty big plants, that can work out really nicely where the vines stay close to the ground. And if they're vining around a tomato plant, or over here we've got some sunflowers, that's going to be completely fine for the base of the sunflower to just be completely taken over by vines. And over here we've got these potato plants. If you remember, Sue put them in just a couple weeks ago, so much later than you'd think to plant potatoes, but as you can see, they're growing really nicely. So the plants look great, there's no insect damage on them, so these are just going to keep growing and hopefully make some nice potatoes. So feel free, if you've got an extra space in your victory garden, to just keep on planting a few things and see what you can get by the end of the season.
I was gonna just point out a couple other things here that aren't doing so well. So here we have the row of lettuce. That was planted right before we got about 4 inches of rain, and so we only had a few of the plants germinate. At this point, I'm just gonna hoe that up and put something else in. And then right next to it, we had this row of radishes. Again, this went in right before the rain. I think what probably happened with both the radishes and the lettuce is that we got the 4 inches of rain, and then either the seeds got kind of washed away a little bit, or maybe they rotted because the soil was so wet. So anyway, as Sal was mentioning earlier, it's really not too late to put some new things in, and so I'm just gonna cut my losses here. I'm gonna hoe this all up. There's another little space here that never did get planted, so I'm gonna go ahead and throw in some beans, some carrots, and some beets. We still have time for all of those to reach maturity before the end of the year. And over here we have our beets. They're doing really well. We thinned them a few weeks ago, and now we've had some moisture. They've actually been really liking this weather. You can see how nice and green the tops are. And if you take a look in here, we actually have some beets that are getting very close to being a harvestable size. So we'll keep an eye on this. We can probably be harvesting beets in the next couple of weeks, so that's awesome. And then we'll hop over here to the carrots. So we had also thinned the carrots, and just out of curiosity, I'm going to pull one of these bigger ones and see where we're at. So we've already got some carrots coming in here. Again, these will be another few weeks. All right, and now take a look at our bean plants here. So they've got lots of flowers on them, and some of the beans are actually starting to get to be edible size. You're going to want to really keep an eye on your bean plants right now, because beans come to size really quickly. So you're going to want to take a look every few days and be harvesting the ones that are edible so that they don't get away from you. So this is exciting. We got beans.
So here we are with another one of our brassica crops. These are the broccolis over here. And if you can see, this one head right here is starting to look kind of nice. It's a little bit of a lighter green color than I would be expecting it to be. So I'm not exactly sure what is happening to this broccoli. It might be a response to the weather, or it might be just something with this particular variety. So we're just gonna keep an eye on it, and if it starts to send out, if the branches start to send out these long shoots, then that's going to let us know that it's bolting, it's trying to make flowers and trying to make seeds. So if your broccoli is starting to like split up and make like these more individual little broccoli plants, you're going to want to cut that right away so that you can eat it. Otherwise, if your head is nice and compact and dense, just keep an eye on it, and it should grow. You know, I would expect this to grow bigger, and then we're going to be able to harvest it when it's reached a nice size. But one thing about brassicas is just they don't perform very well when it's really hot, and so these last 3 weeks of mid 80s to 90s degree temperatures could really have impacted the plants and really just kind of messed with their cycles. So every year is different, and just want to keep an eye on your plants. So our final brassica we're going to take a look at is we've got some cauliflower here, and these cauliflowers, you know, we'll take a look. The plants look good, the leaves look nice, not too much bug damage. And then we're looking here to try to see if there's a little head forming, which there is not yet. So we're just gonna keep an eye on these, and hopefully they'll head up soon. If you are starting to get a head on your cauliflower, so you're just gonna see, you know, a little tiny white cauliflower, to make sure that the cauliflower stays this really nice white color and doesn't get this like kind of yellowish, brownish, like off color, you're gonna want to do what's called blanching. So that's where you're gonna protect the cauliflower head from getting too much sunlight. And the easiest way to do that is just to utilize some of the leaves of the plant. So if we had a little cauliflower head starting here, we could just take a few of these outer leaves and then just get a string or twine or whatever, and then just kind of tie these leaves loosely around the cauliflower, and that's going to help protect it and keep it this really nice color and texture as it matures. And then just, you know, take take a look at it once a week or so and make sure that it's not too tight or the head isn't getting kind of crushed by the leaves. But it should be a pretty simple way to just keep the leaves around it so that the cauliflower turns out really nice.
And we have some things to harvest this week. So I was just going to run through a few plants that we have harvestable vegetables on. So our cucumbers, cucumbers are sort of a matter of personal preference, whether you like to eat them kind of on the small side or on the bigger side. I tend to like to eat them when they're a little more immature. So we've got one here that I would actually go ahead and harvest. It's really handy to have a little knife and maybe a little scissors with you when you go out to harvest. So I'm going to use a little knife. You could use the scissors too. And I'm just going to cut the stem right near the plant. And that way, you know, you could try to twist it off or something, but sometimes if you do that, you either break the fruit, which means it won't keep as long, or sometimes you can even bend the stem, the branch of the plant, and then you can injure your plant. So having a knife or a scissors is really handy for harvesting. Also, what I should have is a basket or something, but I don't. So we're going to take a look at our zucchini plant. We've definitely got zucchinis to harvest. So the first thing I'm seeing here is that we have one that's kind of rotting, and you will for sure want to get those out of there too. You don't want to leave a rotten fruit on your plant. So I am just going to go ahead and cut that off and put it in the compost pile. And even though I harvested last week, it was a week ago, and so as you can see, my zucchinis have already gotten away from me. So I'm going to cut at the base here, right by the plant. And this is one that, you know, is kind of on the too big side. So you may or may not want to eat this one. You may or may not want to drop this one off on your neighbor's front porch. But zucchini, we're at the point in the season where you're going to want to harvest it every couple days, at least a couple times a week. But as you can see, waiting a whole week is too long at this point. So we've got a bunch of zucchini here to harvest, and those will be going to the Amory area food bank. So check it out, we've got a bee in our zucchini flower here, and that's awesome. It's really good to see pollinators in our garden doing the work and pollinating our veggies for us.
Right down here there's a wasp. Wasps might be kind of frightening to people, especially if you've got allergies, but wasps are a really amazing insect predator of a lot of like vegetable pests. So if you have wasps in your garden, you definitely don't want to try to like spray or do anything to get rid of them, because they are going to go and they're going to eat the larva of a lot of different just like insect predators. So wasps are definitely your friend in your garden.
One other thing we wanted to mention this week was something we haven't talked about yet is record keeping. We really should have mentioned it at the beginning, because it really is great to keep notes about your garden, keeping notes about things like when you planted, when things, you know, how things are doing. And if you have dates on those, it can really help you to see the next year, you know, how did your beans do, the ones that you planted in the middle of the season, and what date did you plant them? I mean, remembering that every year is different, but still those dates and those notes can really give you a lot of information for the coming years. So keeping records and keeping notes on your garden is really helpful. Your phone can really help too. If you take pictures, it'll date stamp. So taking pictures of your garden can be helpful as far as record keeping as well. And we want to just encourage you to do one other type of record keeping this year, which is if people could consider keeping records of your harvest and actually taking notes about how much you've harvested. We're going to do that here in our garden. And we were thinking it would be really fun if everybody kept notes about how much they harvested, and then if we gathered that information together, we could see collectively how much food we have grown in the Amory region this year in our victory gardens. So you don't have to be super scientific about it, but you know, if you could just keep notes about, I harvested a bunch of kale, I harvested, you know, 3 pounds of zucchini, I think it would be really fun and really interesting for us to see what we've all collectively grown.
Yeah. And amazing to just think about, you know, things on the scale of tons of produce that we could potentially grow with 175 victory gardens in the area. So I think, yeah, it would just be really interesting information and great for your own, you know, like mental well-being. Is like you produced, you know, how many pounds of food for your own family, and just what a good feeling that is. So there's also a few resources now that we're in the full swing of things and everybody's garden is different. We don't have a ton of pest issues, a little bit of disease that we've kind of pointed out over the last couple weeks, but we are going to pin some resources. Just if you've got pests or disease and you're not really sure what it is, we can hopefully link you to some good sources that are going to be able to help you solve any of your garden problems. And also the best resources I think we found are definitely like .edu sites,
Yeah.
so universities and other just like state extension offices generally provide the most clear, simple, and just accurate information, whereas there are a million different backyard gardening blogs if you're curious to go a little bit deeper, but as far as just getting a quick, reliable answer, those resources will be down below.
Yeah, and I'm just going to note too that a lot of times the university resources have really, really good diagnostic. You know, they usually have photos and really good descriptions. The only caution I would make is that a lot of them tend to give chemical solutions to the problems. And sometimes they will also give organic solutions, but you really have to sort of read and make sure what it is they're recommending as far as solving the problem, because the universities do tend to give chemical options kind of at the forefront. And also people have been using the Amory Victory Gardens Facebook page. I've been seeing questions and comments on there, and I've certainly been paying attention. And again, you know, the comments with the videos, and Sal and I will definitely try and help you. And we can also try to help you maybe source some organic ways to combat any insect or disease problems that you're having. So keep using the comments and keep using the Amory Victory Gardens Facebook page, and we'll try and help you out. Oh, I should also note, pretty soon you'll all be getting notification of a Q&A that we're going to be doing here at the garden. So we're going to do an in-person socially distanced event where we're just going to check out the garden, and we're going to do some Q&A and meet other gardeners. So be looking for the information about that event. It's coming up in August.
Yep. So I think that's it for this week. Thanks for joining us. Make sure to tend your garden, harvest your crops, send us pictures, send us questions, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.